Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Konrad Sanders is the founder of the Creative Copywriter, which is a content strategy and copywriting agency. He uses networking as part of his lead acquisition process, but he's also met some of what he refers to as the key cogs in his business through networking. And also, he says it's all about having deep conversations and making friends with people. Thank you very much for being my guest on the podcast today, Konrad.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So you run a content strategy and copywriting agency, but have you always been into writing? What's your background?
Yeah, great question to start off with. As I mentioned to you, I like a ramble sometimes, so I'll try to keep this fairly succinct while telling you my life story at the same time. So, have I always been into writing? Yes. I loved English language was probably my favourite subject at school, and I used to write stories. I wrote this kind of fighting fantasy book in my early teens.
Yeah.
Nothing that ever got published. And so, yeah, I was always into kind of creative writing. I went to uni to study philosophy, which I guess is one of those subjects which teaches you so much, but also, I guess, so little in a sense as well, in terms of actual practical, or giving you a practical career path. But it helps you think, and I wrote a lot of essays essentially, and I was a bit of a last minute person. I kind of left things till, my till the essay deadline just 2 days before, and would bang those essays out. And I was good at doing that, kind of writing under pressure. And then later, several years later in life, I'm not sure how much to tell you, but basically after uni, I went to Australia. I met my now wife, who's actually the managing director of our agency.
Yeah.
Who's from Israel originally. We travelled around together. There's a reason why I'm telling you this backstory. It will all make sense.
It's all interesting. Carry on.
Yeah, I'll keep going. So we travelled around. We're in Australia for about a year and a half together, and then 6 months in Southeast Asia, and then we kind of came to this crossroads where we said, all right, what do we do now? We're in love. We want to stay together, but because she was from Israel, I was from England. It was quite difficult with the whole visa situation. So I ended up going to Israel without a work visa. I was kind of stuck in her parents' lovely home for about 4 months, applying for a visa while she was working. And I essentially started doing online courses, fell into copywriting, understood what copywriting, discovered this amazing thing that was copywriting, the fact that you could use words to make a living, to make money, and to persuade people, and all these great things. And that's when it really started. That's when I sort of understood what copywriting was. And I also, at the same time, which was kind of plays into what we do now, I took a course on SEO, so search engine optimization. The two go hand in hand very powerfully, because SEO is all about understanding data and research, trying to figure out what people are searching for, get inside their mind, and then copywriting is about kind of persuading, convincing and converting them. So the two kind of led towards me eventually building an agency based on SEO principles. As you said, a content strategy and copywriting agency. We're called the Creative Copywriter, and now about kind of 10 years on or so, we're a 7-figure agency, and my wife Nitsan joined in 2017. She's the kind of yin to my yang. She got a very different brain to me. I'm kind of the creative visionary, and she's an absolute organizational guru. So she's, she leads the agency from that side of things. And yeah, basically when she joined, we really started growing, because we had those kind of two sides of the coin that work really, really well together. So yeah, I'm not sure how succinct that answer was, but I kind of gave you my life story fairly quickly.
No, that's really interesting. I love hearing people's stories and how they've got to where they are and where they came from. So you've been in this business now for over a decade. What differences have you seen in the copywriting and content trends over that time?
That's actually a really interesting question as well. I would say that the interesting thing about copywriting is that the human brain has not changed for a very long time. While technology is moving extremely rapidly and the platforms in which we consume content are changing and the algorithms are changing, and you really need to understand those algorithms when it comes to writing copy and content. And those are definitely the things that I have seen change, such as, in the SEO world about 12, 13 years ago, there were some famous updates to Google called Panda and Penguin, and then there was Hummingbird. I won't go into them in great detail, but they changed things quite a lot. They essentially meant that better copy and content would work better for you than what we called keyword stuffing.
Yeah.
In the old days, you could just hack the system. You could kind of write a pretty crappy article and just shove the keyword in like multiple times, and then you would show up on page one of Google. And there were all these kind of SEO hackers. I was one of them, so I know I kind of understand that world. But basically, the gradual changes have made things more and more human, so that it's pretty good for me in my business, to be honest, because it means that you need great, engaging, audience-driven copy and content.
Yeah.
And then within social platforms, things are always changing. Even LinkedIn, for example, which is a great kind of online networking platform. The algorithm, even over the last couple of years, has shifted quite a lot. And during COVID, I think more people got involved in LinkedIn, kind of for obvious reasons, right? They were stuck indoors during lockdown, and you can see various types of copy and content kind of working better and then becoming saturated because they're overdone. Like everyone follows that trick, and then people start zigging while the industry is zagging, and then the algorithm kind of favors that because it's new and fresh and different. So you see a lot of these kind of trends in terms of how what copy and content within platforms, I guess, feeds into the algorithm. But back to my original point, the human brain has not evolved, right? And this pretty much the same, many techniques when it comes to copywriting apply today as powerfully as they did 100 years ago. So you can look at some of the old newspaper ads of literally 100 years ago, and it's conversational copy, it's choppy copy, the sentences are sort of fragmented and broken up, it's written in a way that as though you're talking to one person. It plays into emotions. Those same emotions are the same as our grandparents back then as we have today. So it's really interesting how technology has advanced and evolved, and you need to be you need to have kept on top of that and abreast of how those algorithms are changing. But the essence, I would say, the essence of copywriting and what words move people to action, and what words kind of grab attention, and what words really make people feel a certain way, has remained the same. And we still learn in the copywriting world, and we actually have this is a little plug here. We have a copywriting academy that's kind of a side business and something that we offer online. We still learn from some of those old techniques and those old newspaper ads from 100 years ago when it comes to kind of studying the art and science of copywriting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So with all that in mind, what are the kind of common mistakes that you see people making when it comes to their content and the copy that they're putting out there?
I could go on for days with this one.
Maybe not days. Let's
I won't. Minutes. I'll try minutes. So common mistakes are, I would say, especially in the B2B world, there's this kind of misconception that if you're in the B2B world, business to business, right, then you kind of need to write in this very professional voice and tone and style, aka boring, dull, full of jargon, full of like industry buzzwords. And what happens there is that you're missing that key ingredient, which I mentioned before, which is conversational copy.
Yeah.
We call it real talk, being human. Do you talk like that at home? That's a nice litmus test. And so many B2B brands just get all stilted all of a sudden because they think, I'm writing to a business, I'm writing to a business person. The reality is it's H to H, it's human to human, right?
Yeah.
You're talking to an individual landing on your website or whatever touch point it is, and they're human, right? They watch Netflix at the weekends. They grew up with stories and storytelling, and they're social creatures, so they're much more likely to be engaged if they feel like they're sitting down and having a conversation with you. That's why things like podcasts, for example, are so engaging, because we like conversations as humans, and stories as well. So I think a huge issue with especially B2B brands is not writing in a conversational way, having too much jargon in there. So remove all jargon, and that kind of removes clarity as well. Crystal clarity is really important when it comes to copy. And there's all kinds of problems when it comes to content marketing as well. I'll give you one. Most brands try to propose on the first date. They just think that it's all about selling, and actually this is probably a nice segue into networking, because I think it's often the same issue. Most of your prospects out there in the world, in fact on average it's about 97% of your target audience, are not ready to buy, right? And that's very important to understand and think about for a second. They're not in buying mode. They're not ready to buy. So you can't sell to people who aren't ready to buy. If you go up to someone, think how annoying it is when a salesperson catches you on an off guard, on a cold call, or even in a shop when you're just browsing. It's actually annoying. It makes you want to run for the hills, because you're not ready to buy, right? So don't try to sell with your messaging all the time. That's why content marketing exists. Content marketing is about offering value, educating, becoming a thought leader, becoming a trusted advisor, and warming prospects up and nurturing them with value-driven content, until they are in that place when they are ready to buy, and you will be front of mind at that point. It's a no-brainer, because hopefully they've subscribed to your content, you're in their inbox, and you've just offered all this selfless value to them, and then your brand pops to mind when they are ready.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about networking now then. You said it's very similar, and it is. Nobody wants to be sold to in a networking meeting, do they?
No, exactly. And I think I discovered that quite early on. I remember my very first networking event way back when. If I were to hazard a guess, it may have been 2012, perhaps. And I thought the goal was to get my business card out to as many people in the room as possible, right? And I think that's probably a common misconception.
Yep.
I'm here to sell. I'm here to generate leads. My business, or if I'm a sole trader, a freelancer, right? I'm going out there to generate leads, so I need to just sell. And much like the digital world, as I just mentioned, especially I'd say in a networking event, even more so, people are not there to buy. They're not there to be sold to. It's such a scattergun approach that you're just much more likely to ruffle feathers, annoy people, and not have what we like to call meaningful conversations, which should be the goal. So really, if that is your perception of networking, even, you should shift it towards understanding networking as building real relationships, and I'd say it's playing the long game. It's a long-term strategy. It's about consistency, building real relationships, and seeing what value you can offer to people, what value you can add to their lives. How can you help them with something? And like I said, having a meaningful conversation, digging deep into their their current challenges, their pain points. What is it that they're looking for? Are they looking for a particular person? Do they have a particular target buyer persona that you might know and you might be able to connect them with? By doing that, by connecting them with people, let's say after the event, there's this thing called the law of reciprocity, right? You're kind of scratching their back.
Yeah.
They will arguably sort of feel like they owe you a favour in a sense, and maybe they'll connect you with someone, or you've just built a solid relationship based on value, and it might be that a year down the line they stumble upon your perfect target, buyer persona, and then they remember you, especially if you did them a favour, and then they pass that lead over to you. So like I said, it's really about the long game.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are you sort of currently using networking within your business? What kind of networking events do you go to, and how often would you do that?
We have a very structured approach to lead acquisition for the agency, and I'll have to mention that it's come from our agency consultants called Cactus. Just mentioning in case you think, oh, this is Konrad's strategy. I don't have to pay dues there. And it's based on these. We've kind of segmented our lead acquisition channels into 4 areas. One of them is digital marketing, and SEO for us at least plays a big part of that, because that's how we built the agency. The other one is so the second one is referrals, and you can do referral marketing, but it's quite common to get referrals from if you're doing a good job for clients. And then the third one, I'll get to the main one here is Nest, which is networking, events, social and talks. So that's what it stands for. Arguably the first 3 of those are kind of all forms of networking, because going to events, you'll be networking, and social means kind of socializing, which is also a form of networking. And for anyone going, I couldn't possibly think about going to a networking event, it sounds horrible, some kind of corporate thing, just going, we've been encouraged by our consultants to go to social, join clubs, go and play golf, or join, start new hobbies, because that is a form of networking. You're building real relationships, and some of the best, leads eventually might come from that, because you never know what, company that person works for, or who they know, and that is a form of networking. So back to your question, it's a key part of how we generate leads. I have as the kind of networker of the agency, because I'm basically kind of a glorified salesperson, I guess, and I'm the one that kind of builds relationships and goes out and about. I have a quota to hit, so a KPI, which is 25 meaningful conversations with new people every month. And I know that certain people within my world, within the agency world, have a goal of 50 per month. And both of those might sound like daunting figures to people, but the reality is that's basically one networking event per week. Because, for me, 25, it's not a huge amount. If I go to 1 per week, on average, it might be I go to 2 on a particular week rather than, 1 every single week. Then that's, meeting sort of 5-6 people there and having those meaningful conversations. And by consistently doing that, and that is key, consistency is key. You just build your network, essentially.
Yeah. So if you took the networking out of your equation, what difference do you think that would make to your business, if you stopped doing the networking?
That's a toughie. It's hard to know in a sense, but it would mean. I mean, there's so much that I've got from networking beyond just lead generation. I think that's an important thing to add.
Yeah.
And I think I sort of skipped past one of your previous questions, which is which networking sort of events you go to. I'll jump into that quickly because I think it will help me explain my next point. I go to a mix of different sort of networking groups. There's definitely a big chunk of that is agency founders, so people like me. And, you know, I go to groups. There's Agency Collective, Agency Nomics, which is actually ran by the people I mentioned, our consultants, and there's lots of kind of agency networking groups. Now, obviously, that's good for partnerships, right? Because we do strategy in words in a nutshell. So naturally, it's very good for us to have a partnership with a design agency and a digital marketing agency and a UX agency. So, you know, and you send each other leads. But I got a ton of value from just peer-to-peer knowledge sharing as well. From, you know, going to that kind of group. And that's where we found our current consultants, you know, who've helped grow us from a 4-person team to, you know, a 7-figure in revenue agency. And so, you know, and that's where I found, you know, really great partners, an agency called Fountain, for example, another it's actually a double husband and wife team. There's 4 founders there. They're both husband and wives, and like we're great friends now, and we also send each other leads, and you know, and one of them is my wife Nitzan's mentor. So you get so much more from networking than just lead generation. So I want to go back to your question, which was, if I'd removed it, first of all, we would get less leads. I can't put a figure on that. I'd have to dig into our pipeline and work that out. But which would mean less money, which mean we wouldn't be hitting our target. So our growth over the last sort of since 2017 would have been a lot slower. And arguably, if I'd never gone networking, I wouldn't have met so many people that have been key cogs along the way, you know, in the success of the agency, that maybe we wouldn't have grown at all. I would go so far as to say that there are key people in that journey that have helped us so much through knowledge and mentoring and things like that, that we may have never made the right decisions early on in terms of building a fast growth agency, because essentially we needed that hindsight from experts and people that have been there, done that, which I wouldn't have got without networking, because I can think of those specific people and I met them all through networking.
Yeah. So if someone is listening who hasn't tried networking yet for their business and is feeling a bit daunted by it, what advice would you give them?
Right, I'd say go for it. I know that it's quite a common fear. It's almost like a common phobia, much like public speaking. I guess it's sort of I think I know lots of people that sort of hate the thought of networking and the idea of being in a room and forcing yourself into conversations, and look, it can be a tiny bit scary the first couple of times, you know, especially when you find yourself there and suddenly everyone else is in a conversation and you don't see anyone by themselves that you can go up to, and you kind of have to go and be a third wheel, right, and join it, try and force yourself in, and you know, it will be a little bit scary, but all I can say is kind of try to get out of your comfort zone and push for it, because it is so valuable and you get so much value from it. In terms of actual tips, I guess, as to like what to do, you know, I'd say, you know, first of all, while we mentioned the fact that you're not there to sell and you're there to have meaningful conversations and develop relationships, you still definitely should talk about your business, right? Yeah. And you should have like what we call an elevator pitch, you know, make sure you know how to talk about your business in a few lines that talk about your unique value proposition. So what is it that you bring to the table uniquely? What makes you different, and how do you add value to people or companies' lives, and who are you looking for? So have that down, like know what you're, at least before you go into it for the first time, know what you're going to say about yourself and your business. Even rehearse it a few times. I'm on kind of discovery calls with clients all the time, so I naturally have a little spiel that I give, and I go to networking all the time. But I think that is important because let's say you spend half an hour talking to someone, and you try to spend 20 minutes asking them about what they're looking for, their challenges, etc. You still want to spend at least 5 minutes going, okay, this is what I do, and this is who I'm looking for. Because otherwise it is a bit of a missed opportunity. They'll remember you maybe, but they won't remember what you do. And that is crucial. So I'd say that's important. And another thing I would say is that an approach I've taken with networking is, as opposed to the first time I went, which I mentioned, where I was like, scattergun approach, I need to speak to as many people as possible and give out my business card. I much prefer to have longer conversations with people that I just click with, people that I like. And I've found that approach works a lot better for me because I have deeper, I may not have as many conversations, and that's why my KPI is 25 and not 50 like a lot of agency founders I know within the same kind of consultancy group, because I prefer to have deeper connections. And I sometimes will spend an hour chatting to one person just because we get on really well and we share the same values, and I really think those deeper connections and relationships are the ones that stand the test of time. They last. And next time you're at an event and you see that person, you go back to them. Don't think, oh, I know them, I need to crack on with other people. Go back and deepen that relationship, because I find that there's this surface level conversation, there's the small talk part, right? But the longer you talk with someone, you kind of unravel more things. Like it just naturally happens. The conversation deepens and you unravel things where, oh right, oh you're looking for that, or that person, and something happens there where you actually can provide value to each other's lives. You actually learn more about each other and not only become potentially friends, and that makes networking a lot more enjoyable because you're hanging out with people you like. You want to go back to the same sort of event or the same group, but you unravel these I guess these things that you wouldn't have done if it was just surface level, 10-minute chat, move on to the next. So as a tip, I guess, go in there looking to make friends and have deeper relationships, and don't worry about only talking to 3 people, but having really long, deep, good conversations with them, because it will pay dividends in the end.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. So finally then, if people are interested in learning more about the Creative Copywriter or the Academy that you mentioned earlier, what's the best place for people to find you?
Right, so you can check out our website, first of all, which is creative-copywriter.net, and you can learn about the agency there and what we do, and also in the menu bar there, there's a link to the Academy. So it's essentially the same URL but /academy. But a good place is to connect with me on LinkedIn, connect or follow me on LinkedIn. So that's Konrad Sanders. I'm sure you'll see the name down here somewhere. And I put out a lot of content about, copywriting, content strategy, and my agency journey, and also ADHD, which is something I was diagnosed with later in life. So I kind of like to talk about that personal side of things as well. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, and hopefully you'll enjoy my content. And it's a good place to kind of learn more about, content strategy, copywriting, and all that good stuff.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for being my guest this morning. That's been a really interesting conversation, and I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy it.
Thanks, Liz. I hope they did. Hope I didn't ramble on too much, and I hope there were some valuable little tidbits in there for everyone.
Definitely some nuggets, yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.